Welcome to Horrible Fates, where the most unexpected and tragic endings to seemingly ordinary lives are examined. We will take some time to explore the darkness that can lurk just beneath the surface of everyday existence. June 21st, 2007, at Kentucky Kingdom in Louisville, Kentucky. Three friends, enjoying their time at the park, proceed to board the Superman Tower of Power ride. The ride would soon commence, and in the blink of an eye, a snapping sound would be heard by all those on and around the ride. Horrifying screams would soon fill the air. A seemingly enjoyable day had just become an absolute nightmare for 13-year-old Kaitlyn Lassiter. What had happened? What went wrong? This is Kaitlyn's story. Welcome to The Cellar. Kaitlyn and her family lived in Germantown, Kentucky. For the most part, Germantown is considered a nice place to live. It's well known for its historic charm, tight-knit community, affordability, and walkability. These features have resulted in a variety of residents settling down there, from young professionals, families, and retirees. Germantown was beloved by all those who ventured its way. To give a little bit more context, Germantown is located around 144 miles or 232 kilometers northeast of Louisville and 53.4 miles or 86 kilometers southeast of Cincinnati, Ohio. Kaitlyn lived with her parents, Randy and Monique Lassiter. Growing up, Kaitlyn was well liked by all who came into contact with her. At Highland Middle School, she was said to be a very popular student. Kids that went to school with her said that she was an extremely fun person to be around. Kaitlyn had just recently celebrated a birthday. She was now 13 years old, and as a teenager, she was craving some independence, some freedom. Kaitlyn would speak with her parents, and they ended up agreeing to let her go with a couple of friends to the Kentucky Kingdom amusement park, formerly known as Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom. On Thursday, June 21st of 2007, Kaitlyn hopped into the car with her parents, Randy and Monique, and they began the 2.5-hour trek west to Kentucky Kingdom. They would soon drop Kaitlyn off at the park. Kentucky Kingdom is a theme park in Louisville, Kentucky. The park sits on 67 acres of land and includes a large collection of amusement rides as well as the Hurricane Bay Water Park. The park's construction began back in 1986 and cost roughly $12 million to build. If you adjust for inflation today, the cost would have been over $34 million. Kentucky Kingdom would open to the public on May 23, 1987. But sadly, after one season, the park ended up going into bankruptcy. The park was reopened by businessman Ed Hart in 1990, and in 1998, the park was sold to Six Flags. Six Flags would run the park up until 2009 before closing it down. It would sit vacant for a while, but in 2014, Ed Hart would once again get the park going, and 7 years later, the park's operating rights were sold to Herschen Family Entertainment, who still run the park to this day. It was a hot day in the low 90s. Very few clouds littered the mostly clear blue skies. It was perfect weather for Kaitlyn and her two friends as they began to wander around the park. From all reports, the day was going as it should as the girls boarded rides and were having a great time. As they continued their travel through the park, they soon came upon the Superman Tower of Power ride. For context, the Superman Tower of Power was an Intamin-designed giant drop model. It was nearly identical to the one located at Six Flags St. Louis. The ride initially opened in 1995 as the first of its kind. The ride's original name was Hellevator, but in 2007 it underwent some changes and was renamed Superman Tower of Power. To give you an idea of how the ride works, guests would board the ride and sit in one of 4 seats, located in several cars attached to the tower. When the ride begins, they are quickly taken 177 feet or 54 meters into the air at a speed of 12 miles per hour or 19 kilometers an hour. The ride then stops at the top and holds there for several seconds. With little notice, the ride then drops passengers back down 154 feet or 47 meters at speeds of 54 miles per hour or 87 kilometers an hour. Using magnetic brakes at the end, the ride comes to an abrupt stop just 23 feet or 7 meters from the ground below. High-strength steel cables are vital for the ride to smoothly lift and drop passengers safely. Overall, it's an exhilarating experience. Kaitlyn and her friends would soon board the ride. Once seated, they were carried swiftly up to the top and eventually dropped back down with zero issue. The girls exited the ride, and as they did, they noticed that the line for the ride was very small. After discussing it amongst themselves, the girls quickly made the decision to get back in line and ride the Tower of Power once more. Pretty soon, Kaitlyn and her friends were once again strapping in. The ride operator checked and made sure everyone was secure, and with everything all set, they pushed a button and set the ride in motion once again. The girls were laughing with one another as the ride began its ascent, but at about 20 feet in the air, the ride began to jolt and shake. The girls' laughter swiftly stopped as the ride continued to shake, followed by a snap and whip-like sound. The girls started to yell for help as a cable hit Kaitlyn, wrapping itself around her torso and neck. Looking up now, the girls saw more cables from the ride were falling all around them. The girls' screams for help could be heard by onlookers who started to crowd near the ride, but for some reason, the ride did not stop. It just kept going. The smell of smoke soon hit the air, signaling that something was horribly wrong. As the ride reached the top, the girls were covered with cables. Some of the cables wrapped around their necks, and the girls worked frantically to pull them off. As the girls desperately untangled themselves, the ride commenced its freefall back to the earth. The girls were plunging straight down now, and as they did, the cables that had wrapped themselves around Kaitlyn's legs began to tighten. As the ride continued its plummet back to earth, the ropes around Kaitlyn's limbs severed both of her feet clean off above the ankles. It was a horrifying scene for all to witness. The ride would soon come to a stop as the operator had hit the emergency stop button. Sadly, this decision only made things worse for Kaitlyn, as the ride had stopped and locked her in place far from the ground below. All she could do was sit there and wait for rescue as she suffered the horrible realization that her feet were gone. The wait was excruciating, but eventually emergency services arrived on scene and Kaitlyn was rushed to a nearby hospital. There, doctors discovered that Kaitlyn's femur had also been broken during the ordeal. Kaitlyn's feet had been recovered, and doctors worked tirelessly to try and reattach them. By some miracle, they managed to successfully reattach her right foot, but her left leg was too badly damaged, and they had to amputate just below the knee. In the end, it was a miracle that Kaitlyn had survived. With Kaitlyn now recovering in a hospital, an investigation was soon underway to figure out what had gone wrong. In the end, it was determined that numerous factors had played into the rope snapping. Reason one was maintenance related, as according to the ride's manufacturer, they provided a manual to Six Flags which stated that technicians should use a cotton rag to inspect the cables every 6 months. However, this procedure was found to have never been followed. Instead, to prevent slippage, park technicians applied cornstarch to the cables. In the end, the cable had been worn out and it finally decided to give way with Kaitlyn on board. The second issue was simply operator training. The operator of the ride was unsure of what to do. The emergency stop should have been pressed sooner, but the operator had gotten on the phone first to ask for help. This cost precious seconds that led to Kaitlyn losing both of her feet. The ride would be shut down after the incident, and the park made the decision about a year later to demolish the attraction for good. Kaitlyn would continue her road to recovery, but it was not an easy one. Her family would go after the park financially, and an undisclosed settlement would be reached. In this settlement, lifetime medical care was awarded to Kaitlyn from the park, ensuring that she would always be taken care of. Eventually, Kaitlyn would learn to walk again with the use of a prosthetic leg. She would use what happened to her as motivation, speaking out publicly and lobbying for changes in safety throughout all amusement parks. She is truly a remarkable woman who was forced to overcome something that no young person should ever have to endure. I hope Kaitlyn and her family are all well, and I hope Kaitlyn is at peace now with what happened to her. May she live a long, happy life. A big thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content I make here on the channel, then please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel continue to grow. Also, you can check the description box below and find the link to my merch store and a link to my membership tier for the channel. YouTube ad revenue has been a bit rough lately, and for only $2.99 a month, you can help support my channel further, and you get some cool perks to go with it. One of those perks is having your name listed here in the end of each of my videos, so thank you to all my Cellar Dweller members. Also, if you'd like to submit any kind of real-life scary story of any kind, please do so using the email linked in the description box below. As always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to help support the channel is greatly appreciated. And until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into the cellar.